The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to the first of our series of Manitou Neo Enhanced Action Pattern tutorials. Just very excited to get started with this, and we will just go ahead and get rolling. There are files attached to this webinar, and they will also be available in the Bold Genius Resource Library. Before you finish the session, you'll see on that control panel there are actually 5 handouts available. So please feel free to actually download those handouts. They are related to today's session. So please go there. If you don't remember to do that before you actually complete this session, they will be available in that Bold Genius Resource Library. Also, we do have the Manitou Neo Bootcamp that is available January 17th and 18th of 2018. The one in October is already sold out fully and completely, but we do have one available January 17th and 18th, 2018. It is already filling up, so please don't wait. We will have this classroom course. The next time that course will be available, it will probably be available only online, so don't miss out. Seats are selling fast. Contact sales@boldgroup.com for more information, or go to the website and follow the link to Manitou Neo Bootcamp to sign up. So today's session, we will be talking about the basics of Manitou Neo action patterns, what makes them enhanced, and then we'll discuss why planning is important before we run away and build enhanced action patterns. And finally, we'll step through building a few action patterns based on some prescribed scenarios. So, some basics. There's some new features added to the action patterns that are new to you that make action patterns now enhanced. They are label and jump to, which allow you to place points in the action pattern that you can then return to when needed. We also have prompts that allow you to set particular dialogues in front of operators to collect pertinent information while handling the alarms. And set allows you to create a value that can call upon it for logic and other features. You can also insert collected information into the activity log automatically. And we can add logic handling where all the magic happens. There you can use if, else for true, false values, and the case statements for when there are multiple choices. It's always important to ask good questions when you're planning out action patterns, enhanced or not. Are you solving the right problem? Did you ask why? At least 5 times. Why do I say 5 times? Because sometimes that whole they need more training or they need an action pattern may not always be the right answer. So you need to make sure that you're asking why at least 5 times. Let's get to the core problem. And do you truly understand the process? One of the best ways to start planning is to build a flow chart. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple flow charts to see what we're talking about. So here's a couple example flow charts that show the decision the first one shows a decision for if a schedule is valid or not. And that flow chart is going to show whether or not if the schedule is valid, we're going to email the customer and close the alarm. And if it's not valid, we're going to contact the customer and contact key holders, and then we're going to close the alarm. The second one on the right-hand side is going to be a little bit more complex. This one is looking for 2 things. First, it's if the customer account is residential or not. And if it's not residential, then it's looking to see if it's currently a recently expired on test. Now, for those of you who are about to ask what defines a recent on test, this is set in the Manitou Supervisor Workstation options and is the number of minutes after an on test time expires. This does not apply to sites manually returned to service by you or a technician. So if either of these are true, then the site must be contacted before the authority to verify the validity of the alarm before contacting the authority or PSAP. If they are not true, then the operator is expected to immediately dispatch the authority or PSAP and make appropriate site contacts after that. And then, of course, contact responsible parties and close the alarm. So you can see that we have that contact information on that right-hand side that we would do when it is residential or the site test is recently expired. But if it's not, if either of those are false, then we would actually do that contact the authority first. So this really does sort of tells us what we need to do before we actually start building those action patterns. So it makes life a lot easier when we can visualize what we need to do before we actually start building those action patterns. So the flow chart on the left, we know that we have to have a general schedule before we build the action pattern. And on the right, we know we have to build the sub-action pattern before we build the main action pattern. So we can really know what we have to do before we actually start planning on it. So then we actually have to start building our action patterns. So we're going to actually step through our scenario 1, which is the general schedule action pattern. Then we have to build the actual action pattern. So I'm going to switch over to my Manitou Neo. I'm going to go ahead and log in. Now in Manitou Neo, we now have a new type of general schedule. It's called action pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my Mountain Shadow Services account that I've got set up that's actually defined. Now I could do this on the monitoring company level, I can do this on the customer level, I can do it on the dealer level. I'm going to do it here on this particular customer level just because I want to show it very specifically on this customer. Now one of the really cool things is that when you do a general schedule on the monitoring company level, you can actually use it as a shell and then just make sure that you label it exactly the same on the customer itself. So my general schedule here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my general schedule. So I'm going to slide my thing out of the way. And I've got my little plus sign here for my adding my general schedule. It's going to validate my password just like you're used to seeing everywhere else. And I'm going to give it a schedule ID. And I'm going to call it days. Oh, I already have one called days. So I'm going to call it GS for my action pattern. And I'm going to call it for my action pattern. And I'm going to use it for my action pattern. So that way it's available for my action pattern itself. So then I'm going to select my days of the week. And I'm going to select my times of the day. So I'm going to call this action pattern during daytime hours. So I'm going to say 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. Oops, or 8 o'clock at night, why not? And then maybe I also do it on the weekends, but I do it at different times on the weekends. So on the weekends, I do it at 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. And now my action pattern general schedule is available. Now, it's a good idea to save and save often. We always know that. So I'm going to say created action pattern general schedule for use in general schedule or in action pattern. I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to go into my action pattern and I'm ready to build it. Now I've gone ahead and I've created my action pattern categories. This is always a good idea just so that it's easier to find them because you can have hundreds of them now and it's easier to have them categorized if you want. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my general schedule action pattern. So all I have is my plus sign here. So I have my plus sign and I can either copy from one that already exists or I'm going to just create a new one. I'm just going to call it general schedule action pattern for continuity's sake here. Schedule action pattern, and I'm going to go ahead and put it under a category. I'm going to use it under my general trouble here. Now I have my valid from and to dates that for those of you who are not familiar with that, this is one that I can use to override for only a period of time. And that critical first contact, it used to be auto run in the older versions. Auto run would automatically run that next action pattern. This one only runs that first action pattern line. We're going to go ahead and say next, and now I've got my ability to build my action pattern. Now I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to actually start with my logic right away because I'm going to use my general schedule. So my logic handle says if, and I'm going to say if my general schedule, and I have to pick my general schedule that I'm going to use, is valid, so that I'm saying that yes it is, or I could choose if it's not. Then I want to do something specific. So I'm going to contact, I'm sending an email. So I'm contacting the customer and I'm going to say customer's email. And I can then say a particular script. So I can say script default, and I can pick a particular script. So I'm going to pick that email, and I can apply it. So I'm going to contact that customer's email, and then my next action is to actually close the alarm. So I'm going to pick alarm handling and close alarm. And then my else is where I'm going to go back to a logic handling and say else. And then I'm going to do something different if it's not inside the schedule. So that's my else. So I'm here, and I'm going to go back to my entity handling, and this is where I'm going to contact my customer again. And this time I'm going to contact the site. And I'm going to apply. And then I'm going to contact again the customer. And this time I'm going to contact the customer's key holders. And I'm going to apply. And this time I'm done with that portion. So I'm going to add my close there. And I'm going to apply. Now this one I made a mistake. I didn't put my resolution code in here. So I've got my little pencil. I can come back and I can edit it. I don't have to remove it anymore. I can actually just come in and edit it. And I can put in my resolution code of maybe auto client, closed by auto client, and apply it. Really nice feature there, I would say, that I can actually go back and edit my mistake instead of having to remove it and add it back in. And then once again, once I start an if, I have to end it. So I have to go back into my line here, and I have to end my logic line, so my end if. Now, I don't have to do any completion beyond that because I've closed my alarm at the end of each of my logic pieces. So at this point, I'm ready to apply everything and then be done. And now I've got my, if it's inside the schedule, contact the customer and close the alarm. Otherwise, contact the customer at the site, contact the key holder, and close the alarm. So great. I'm not completely done though, because I still need to apply it to a particular event. So I'm going to go ahead and save it and say added action pattern. So we'll say, okay, now we always want to test because we never ever apply a new action pattern without testing it. So I'm going to go into my systems, my event monitoring, and I'm going to go into programming, and I'm going to add in a line to test it. So we're going to add in an event programming line, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use, let's see, I don't have a burglary trouble that I've got in here, so I'm going to put in burglary trouble. I'm going to do my all transmitters and any area, and I'm going to do zone 5 since nobody's using that yet. And by default it is an alarm, but I'm going to use my new action pattern that I just created. I'm going to say done and save that. Added new action pattern to test. Say OK. And now I'm ready to go ahead and send my manual signal and test that. Now, for those of you who are wondering where that went, I've got 1 through 5 of 6. So if I hit that, it'll show me there's my new action pattern there. Now I'm going to hit my F4 on my keyboard to bring up my manual signal, just like I would do in my old client. And there it is. And now I can put in my burglary trouble on zone 5. Hit my F5 to send my signal. There's my manual signal. Now if I go into my alarm queue, I should be able to see, oh, I've got a lot of stuff in here. So my Mountain Shadows Services has a few things in here, but there's my alarm, my burglary trouble. And there's my contact customer at email and close alarm. Now, because I don't have an outgoing email server, it's sitting there trying to send it and has the result as unknown. So it's sitting here spinning, waiting for it to actually try and send that so that it gets the confirmation back. It will eventually fail because it's obviously not successful trying to send that email out. So let's see if it'll let me ignore it. Yep, there we go. And now I can close that alarm with its resolution code, testing, action, pattern, but I got the right one because of the fact that it's between 8 and 8, but on Monday through Friday. So that was that first action pattern. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pause what I'm doing, and I'm going to give people a chance to ask questions, but I'm also going to open my control panel and send out a poll. Give everybody a chance to review that poll. All right, I'm going to close that poll and we're going to show the results. All right, so we've got about 65% have seen the enhanced action patterns in Manitou Neo, and 35% have not. So, well, welcome for those of you who have not. I hope you like what you see so far, and we'll go from there. All right, so no questions have been presented yet, so we'll go ahead and move forward. And we're going to move on to scenario 2. So scenario 2 is about our standard fire action pattern. So we are going to create that on the monitoring company. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to Manitou Neo, and we're going to go to the monitoring company record. Now I've created shortcuts. You'll actually be able to create your own personal shortcuts to make your life a lot easier, but you can actually get to the monitoring company through our menu system as well. So the monitoring company is right there. And our action patterns, once again, we have them created very simply in our categories, but we're going to create this from scratch so that you can see all of the different elements. So the first thing that we actually create is the secondary action pattern. So it's the action pattern that we use for call confirmation. Now I've already created it here, but I'm going to actually step through creating it so that we can see all the individual steps. So I'm going to create a new action pattern, and I'm going to call it confirmation. So this is a call confirmation action. I'm going to put it in my category of fire. I don't have to make it valid from and to for it at all, but we are going to make sure that's in that category of fire. Now, this one we are going to specifically just, who do we contact first? Who do we contact second? So for example, we might have an ECV contact. We might have a different contact type. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to contact the customer's site. So we contact the customer, that contact point type of site, and let me slide my thing out of the way, and we apply it. So that's contact customer at site. Then we are going to contact the customer's person type of ECV. So we have that, and we apply it. And then we are going to contact the authority, and that authority type of fire. We apply that, and now we've got our call confirmation action. So this one is now ready for us to be able to call it anytime that we need it. Then we are going to have our fire action that we actually call into when we need it. So our next bit is to add our fire action. So our fire action, and I'm just going to build it brand new again, fire action pattern. Once again, it's going to be in our fire section. And now what we're going to do is we are going to build our logic. So we want to know whether or not the customer is residential. That's our first bit of logic. So if our customer value customer type equals, and we do have to type this out, residential. Okay, apply. So if my customer type equals residential, then we are going to include. So action, include our call confirmation action. Apply. Okay, so far so good. All right, then we are also going to let's see, else if there it is, site test expired. So a status flag, site test expired, apply. Then once again, we are going to go into that action handling, include category of fire, call confirmation action, apply, okay? And then we have our else. So we go back to that logic, else. And we're going to then go into entity, contact the authority of fire, apply, contact customer, site, apply. And then we have to do all of our end ifs. So we have our logic handling, we have our end if for this if right here, and then we have another end if for the next one. Think of these as parentheses. So we opened our parentheses here, we opened another parentheses here, we have to close it and close it again. Now there is a question, excellent question, Amy Condon. It is, once you get comfortable with the commands, can you just type out the action pattern? Yes, you can actually start typing these things in here. So for example, I can do contact, and you notice how it pulls that up. So you can actually start typing these. So I'm going to delete that one. So yes, as you start getting more comfortable with it, you can certainly type these out. Now, once I've done my end if here, I've got my next available thing here, and I still have to contact my customer's key holders no matter which way I go. So I have my contact, my customer, and then my contact point type, or contact person type, sorry, customer key holders, and then we apply it, and then we're ready to close out the alarm. So we're going to close it. We want them to actually enter the resolution code, so we don't actually put one there. And then we've got it ready to go. So we say done. And now we have, if the customer type is residential, include the action pattern for the confirmation. Otherwise, we're going to check if the site test expired. If so, we're going to include that confirmation. Otherwise, we're going to contact the fire department, contact the site, and then we're done contacting the key holder and then closing the alarm. And we're ready to save. Now, all of that is all right here in my Global 1 action pattern. Same thing, exact same flow, just like we did before. Now, one thing that I'm going to show you real quick is really one of the best parts about this is that while we've built this and there's a lot of logic behind it, the operator doesn't have to see all of that. What they can see is a masked version of this. Oh. Apparently, I haven't done the masked version of this. But you can actually mask these. So I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to show you what it can look like when you actually mask it. So you can switch over to masking, and you can say, instead of having it say if customer is residential, you can say check customer type for residential. And we can actually change the color there. We can make that blue, we can make it bold. And then we can actually pick that and say call to verify. We can even mask this and say otherwise check to this. You can even say automatic check to see if the on test time expired. Once again, we can highlight these colors and add colors to this on test, make it bold. Call to verify. otherwise. Same thing, we can even say dispatch police or dispatch fire. Put that in bright red. Call the customer. Put that in blue. Close logic. You can't delete it completely, but you can certainly make it a little bit easier for the operator. There we go, call the responsible parties and close the alarm. So what the operator ends up seeing is a nice clean version of this. So check for the customer type, check customer type for residential, call to verify. Otherwise, automatic check to see if the on-test time is expired, call to verify. Otherwise, dispatch fire, call the customer, close logic, and call the responsible parties and close the alarm. So it really makes it nice and clean, easy to understand, simple to verify, and when the operator gets it, it's a real easy, simple way to get the alarm going. So I'm going to send in a manual signal for my mountain shadows. So I'm going to send in a fire alarm. And we'll do a different zone here. Okay, send that signal through. Go back into my alarm queue. There's my Mountain Shadows Services fire. And there it is, dispatch fire, call the customer, call the responsible parties, and close the alarm. You notice nothing else is in there, none of that logic, none of those extra pieces, just what the operator needs to see and what they need to do. So as an operator, all they have to do is press that D for do. They're going to be able to complete the alarm. They're going to be able to dispatch the authority, get their incident number, and step through the alarm. They're going to be able to, once again, just as an operator, that's the easiest job in the house, they're going to be able to step through the alarm and process it just as they would. So they're going to be able to say notified, they're going to be able to provide the information that they need to, and they're going to step through their responsible parties. There's Brian Best there that they're going to contact. They're going to step through and complete the alarm. They're going to be able to validate whoever they need to. They're even going to be able to cancel and close the alarms based on the information that they get. Customer error. And they even give it a resolution code. Customer caused, and done. Okay, all right. So it looks like we're getting some questions in. So I'm going to go ahead and pause here for a second. Can we set some lines to auto so that the operator does not have to click each line? I have operators that accidentally skip lines and jump right to the call list. I'm looking to avoid mistakes. Absolutely. One of the great things about our action patterns, let me go ahead and jump back in here, is that we actually have the ability on some of these action pattern lines. For example, if I go back into edit here, let me pick here, let's go ahead and edit it, is that we have the ability to do auto run on many of these. So we do have a lot of functionality here. And actually, let me show you a slightly more complex action pattern in my globals. Let's see. We actually have a few of these, for example, on our escalate. Get here. We actually have the ability to auto run quite a few of these. So we can actually make these things happen automatically when they actually auto run at the beginning or end of the alarm. So even some of these can be flagged as hidden. They're not technically hidden from view, but they are something that will just happen automatically. So great question there, Nicole. I'm glad you asked. All right, that was it for the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and launch another poll real quick. Now, based on what you saw here, do you think the action patterns were hard to create? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. So for most of you, the jury's still out. Think that they could be easy, and it really is going to be something that they can be a little daunting at the beginning, but it is something that is going to be a little scary at first, but I can tell you I was scared at first myself. But as I got used to it and as I really started digging in, it's a lot easier than you think. So I'm really glad to hear that you're all kind of warming to the idea that, okay, the jury's still out and looks like it could be easier than you think. So I'm glad to see that. Okay, now one more poll. And it's basically based on these two action patterns that we've shown you today. Which one do you think that you would probably use right away? All right, we'll go ahead and close that poll. And we're going to share that. Looks like the general schedule is the favorite so far of what we've covered today. I'm not at all surprised by that. That one is one that I can think we've had a lot of requests for in the past. So I think it's one that we can definitely roll with. So great points there. Perfect. Now, another question that did come up just while we were talking is the question was, is there a way to insert a script to an operator while they're calling the customer? Yes, there's actually the prompts, and that's something that we were planning on covering on the next one. But since we do have some time today, I'm going to go ahead and show you a couple of these prompts. So I'm actually going to pop over to our Bold Technologies customer. So I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to pull up my Bold Technologies customer because this is one that we actually have a really cool action pattern on for our video one. This one actually has several items on it. So I'm not going to go heavily into this action pattern today just because it is very detailed, but I do want to show you a few of these things that we have in here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click edit on this one and go into the action pattern. First, we have a show plans, which we haven't covered yet, but we also have these connects to video cameras, and then immediately we have a prompt. And basically we have the prompt that says, was there a visible threat? So we're prompting the operator, asking them to give us an answer. We want the operator to tell us whether or not they saw something like a human being or a man with a gun or something like that, or a rock going through a window. Did we see a visible threat? So we give them yes, yes, no, or unsure. And then based on those options, we're going to send them down a particular pathway. If they saw a threat, then we want them to describe what they saw, so that we can actually get that bit of information gone down through the flow. So that's one way that we can collect information. Another way we can do that is we can actually, on our burglary action, I think it's in this one. Nope, it's not. Let's see, maybe it's on this one. No, we have other ones that we actually prompt the operator with particular things like, will you be responding? What color's your car? What's your ETA? Things like that. So we can actually go through and verify with the end customer, will they actually be showing up? So this is one of the things that we want to do with our action pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pat back over to our mountain shadows here, and we're going to go ahead and look at that in an action pattern. So on my Berg action, come on, there we go. Oh, I've already done a few things here on my customer residential and my customer not residential. So I've got my residential contacting the customer first and then contacting the police first if it's not. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to add some lines with the contact the customer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a prompt. So here's my prompt here, and I can add a variable. So each variable I can add. So I can say, for example, I can say car. Actually, I'm going to say ETA first. No, response. So my response is going to be a list. So my prompt is, will you be able to meet the police at the location? Question mark. My mask, now my mask is going to be the two answers, yes or no. And now I can do some funky things with this so I can actually sort of insert into the log. Now this one, we're just going to say yes or no. So will or will not. So I'm going to say yes, vertical pipe, which is just above your enter key, and no. Apply. will you be able to meet the police at the location? And then I have another run. I'm going to do another prompt. So remember, come on, prompt. There we go. And this one, we're going to say, what's your ETA? So ETA. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to just do text for right now. When will you arrive at the location? Question mark. And we don't need a mask this time because it's just plain old text. We're going to apply. And then what is the color and make of your car? Does that sound probably right? I think so. So we're going to say prompt, and this time car. So once again, text. What is the color and make of your car? Question mark. No mask again, and apply. Now, I can do auto run on any of these. If I went back and I hit auto run, I could actually do the auto run and it would just automatically prompt that to the operator. Now, I do want to insert this into the activity log, so I want to pick a log line. And then on that log line, I want to actually say the customer, and this is where I can really get kind of fancy with my actual prompts, but I'm just going to say customer will at response, and you do have to do this in caps. Meet the police in at ETA minutes in a at car. And what this will do is it will, and this one I do auto run and hidden so that it just automatically happens and the operator doesn't actually have to do that line. It will just automatically happen after the prompts. So that makes my life a lot easier. I have the information and it's available in the log line for the operator to read once they do it. So once I've got that in there, I'm ready to go. So I have that done. Now, that information's ready to go. I've got it ready to when I handle the alarm. Now I put it in the residential, but I meant to do it in the commercial because this happens to be a commercial account. Look what I can do. I can just drag it to where it needs to be. Saves my bacon from having to retype everything. So once I'm done with that, I can save my record and I'm ready to test with my Berg action. So now I'm ready to send in my manual signal to test. So I go to my manual signal, I'm going to send a Berg alarm in, and I hopefully don't have anything overriding this. So I'm going to send my Berg alarm in, go back to my alarm queue, Mountain Shadow Services, there's my Berg alarm. There we go. Oops, I had to call the piece out first. Should have put that after the call the customer, but we'll get our point across. And see, it automatically prompted me. Will you meet the police? And now I've got my D for do on all of these because I did not auto run those. So when will you arrive? 15 minutes. Done. And then what color, make of the car? Blue Saturn. And done. That log line automatically goes, and now I've got the call the customer. Now that should have been reversed, but you can see the alarm script long. The customer will, yes, meet the police in 15 minutes in a blue Saturn. So that all automatically is there. Obviously, that would be my contact police normally. So I've got my action pattern that I'm not going to complete all of the other pieces because I don't need it. And then We are just testing, and off we go. Now, isn't it actually asking the question after we hung up? No, it's actually not, because we can actually hide that call and do those prompts while we're actually on the call. So it is not actually doing it after we hung up. So we do have the ability to do it. If the response is no, we could actually build the logic so that it doesn't actually ask for the ETA in car. That's where the logic items would come into play. So it's really quite nice. We can actually manage that pretty well. Will it force the operator to enter information, or can they exit? Technically, they can exit through it if they need to. So the dialer up and active, basically the prompts are going to happen while you're actually actually on the phone with them. It's kind of like the hidden dialer like you've had before. So great. I think I've got all the questions there so far. On the log line, does the @ prompt need to be in the parentheses? No, it doesn't. Basically, I was doing it because I wanted to show yes and no values. You could actually put in there, you could actually have on your action pattern, this is actually kind of cool. Let me go ahead and edit that real quick. You could actually put in more variables here. So in my mask, instead of having yes here, they could say, I could actually put in here will semicolon and now I do have to string this together, so I would put will not semicolon. Now it has to be a complete string together, so it would be kind of ugly, but I could actually say will and will not semicolon in there, and it would actually string it in there as a straight sentence. The only problem is that it cannot have spaces in there, so it would look a little bit ugly in the actual text. So it's actually kind of cool there. As far as if you need an answer before you can move on, the if-then type of thing, I would have to follow up a little bit on forced answers. As far as that goes, Amy, I would probably have to get a little bit more information from the developers if there's an enforcement there as far as that goes. But as far as the flow, it would be something that would rely on logic to know whether or not it can go forward. So technically, yes, but I don't know the enforcement of that. All right, so those are the scenarios that we were planning for today, and it looks like we are pretty close to the end of our time. So what we covered today was some of the basics of what we've added into Manitou Neo since we've moved into the Manitou Neo version. We talked about planning. It's really good to sort of flow chart it out so you understand what needs to be added where before you actually start going in, because you don't want to jump back and forth if you don't have to. And then we built a couple action patterns, and then we tested them. So that's pretty much what we covered today. And then, so I know I've opened it up for questions throughout the whole process, but if you have any more questions, I do have a few more minutes to be available for those. And looks like we're still pretty good on our questions, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next slide, which is basically, we have a whole Bold Genius resource library that has a lot of really good information, including some video tutorials. We do have a whole series, 5 video tutorials on Manitou Neo. We also have the Manitou Neo basically test server that you can sign up for and have a login for your site that you can get in there and beat on it and create enhanced action patterns to your absolute delight and practice, practice, practice. We are absolutely here to support you as far as that goes. We want you to get in there and break it before you buy it and try it as much as you'd like. So we really encourage you to do that. So please do. And we thank you so much for your time today, and you have a great rest of your day.